How do you do, and welcome back to the next reading of the Pilgrim's Regress by C.S. Lewis. We are on to very confusing chapters, but the top line of this next chapter says, "And I would finally turn into lust, but that in the nick of time, the modern literary movement offers to debunk it." I don't know what that means. But we're on to the chapter entitled Ichabod. "Medea, I love you," said John. "We have come to the real island," said Medea. "But oh, alas," said he, "so long our bodies, why do we forbear?" Did that line make sense? "So long our bodies, why do we forbear? Else a great prince in prison lies," sighed she. "No one else can understand the mystery of our love," said he. At that moment a brisk, hobnailed step was heard, and a tall young man strode into the room, carrying a light in his hand. He had coal-black hair, and a straight mouth like the slit of in a pillar box. He was dressed in various kinds of metal wire. As soon as he saw them, he burst into a great guffaw. Guffaw? The lovers instantly sprang up and apart. "Well, Brownie," he said, "at your tricks again?" "Don't call me that name," said Medea, stamping her foot. "I have told you before not to call me that." The young man made an obscene gesture at her, and then turned to John. "I see that old fool of a father of mine has been at you." I don't know why he has that accent, but in my mind he has that accent. "You have no right to speak that way of father," said Medea. Then turning to John, her cheeks flaming, her breast heaving, she said, "All is over. Our dream is shattered. Our mystery is profane. I would have taught you all the secrets of love, and now you are lost to me forever. We must part. I shall go and kill myself." And with that she rushed from the room. Non est hic. Chapter next, because these chapters don't make sense. "Don't bother about her," said the young man. "She's threatened that 100 times. She doesn't..." What? "She's threatened that 100 times, though she doesn't know it." "Brown girl," cried John. "Excuse me, why am I illiterate today?" "And your father?" "My father's been in the pay of the Browns his whole life. He doesn't know it, that old chucklehead. Calls 'em muses, or the spirit, or some rot. In actual fact, he's by profession a pimp." "And the island?" said John. "We'll talk about that in the morning. Ain't the kind of island you're thinking of. Tell you what, I don't live with my father and my precious sister. I live in Escropolis, and I'm going back there tomorrow. I'll take you down to the laboratory and show you some real poetry. Not fantasies, the real thing." "Thank you very much," said John. Then young Mr. Halfways found his room for him, and the whole of that household went to bed. Next chapter, because, again, the chapters don't make sense. Great Promises. I don't know how I feel about this book, by the way. I'm taking a pause just to comment this. There's been a lot of really weird themes in this book so far, and I don't mean the usual kind of normal, okay weird. I mean, like, pimps and racism and really, really, like, taboo stuff that I'm not sure I'm gonna be completely getting away with reading this. But it's in the book, I promise. It's in the book, but I just feel like there might be some offensive stuff in here. But we're gonna keep trying. So the next chapter is called Great Promises. Gus Halfways was the name of Mr. Halfway's son. As soon as he rose in the morning, he called John down to breakfast with him so that they might start on their journey. There was no one to hinder them, for old Halfways was still asleep, and Medea always had her breakfast in bed. When they had eaten, Gus brought him to the shed beside his father's house and showed him a machine on wheels. "What is this?" said John. My old bus, said young Halfways. Then he stood back with his head held to one side and gazed at it for a bit. But presently he began to speak in a changed and reverent voice. She's a poem. She's the daughter of the spirit of age. What was the speed of Atlanta to her speed? The beauty of Apollo to her speed. Now beauty to John meant nothing save glimpses of his island, and the machine did not remind him of his island at all, so he held his tongue. Don't you see, said Gus, our fathers made images of what they called gods and goddesses, but they were really only brown girls and brown boys whitewashed, as anyone found out by looking at them for too long. All self-deception and phallic sentiment. But here you have real art. Nothing erotic about her, eh? Certainly not, said John, looking at the cogwheels and the coils of wire. It's certainly not anything at all like a brown girl. It was, in fact, more like a nest of hedgehogs and serpents. I should say not, said Gus. Sheer power, eh? Speed, ruthlessness, austerity, significant form, eh? Also, and here he dropped his voice, very expensive indeed. Then he made John sit in the machine, and he himself made beside him, and they began pulling at the levers for a long time, and nothing happened. But at least there came a flash and a roar from the machine that bounded into the air and then dashed forward. Before John had his breath, they flashed across the broad thoroughfare, which he recognized as the main road, and were racing through the country in the north of it, a flat country of square stony fields divided by barbed wire fences. A moment later they were standing still in a city where all the houses were built of steel. On to, for some reason, Book 3, Through Darkest Zeitgeistim. Okay. I don't know how to say that word. Escropolis, chapter whatever. It says chapter 1, but we're a quarter of the way through the book, so it's not chapter 1. So it's just chapter Escropolis, I guess. Then I dreamed that he led John into a big room, rather like a bathroom. It was full of steel and glass, and the walls were nearly all window, and there was a crowd of people there, drinking what looked like medicine and talking at the tops of their voices. They were all either young or dressed up to look as if they were young. The girls had short hair and flat breasts and flat buttocks, so they looked like boys. Oh gosh! But the boys had pale egg-shaped faces and slender waists and big hips, so that they looked like girls, except for a few of them who had long hair and beards. What are they so angry about? Whispered John. They're not angry, said Juss. They're talking about art. Then he brought John to the middle of the room and said, Say, here's a guy who's been taken in by my father and wants some real 100% music to clean him out. We'd better begin with something real neo-romantic to make the transition. Then all the clevers consulted together, and they presently all agreed that Victoriana had better sing first. When Victoriana rose, John at first thought that she was a schoolgirl, but after he had looked at her again, he perceived that she was in fact about 50. Before she began to sing, she put on a dress which was a sort of exaggerated copy of Mr. Halfway's robes, and a mask which was like the steward's mask, except the nose had been painted bright red, and one of the eyes had been closed in a permanent wink. Priceless! Exclaimed one of the clevers. Too Puritanian. But the other half, which included all the bearded men, held their noses in the air and looked very stiff. Then Victoriana looked at the toy harp and began. The noises of the toy harp were so strange that John could not think of them as music at all. Then when she sang, he had a picture in his mind of a little like the island, but he saw at once that it was not the island, and presently he saw people who looked rather like his father and the steward and old Mr. Halfway, dressed up as clowns and doing a sort of stiff dance. Then there was a columbine, and a sort of love story, but suddenly the whole island turned into aspidistra in a pot and sang, and the song was over. Priceless, said the clevers. I hope, Will, you liked it, said Gus to John. Well, began John doubtfully, for he hardly knew what to say. But he dared not go further, for at that moment he had a great surprise. Victoriana had thrown her mask away, walked up to him, and slapped him in the face twice as hard as she could. That's right, said the Clevers. Victoriana has courage. We may not all agree with you, Vicky dear, but we admire your courage. Oh, Vicky dear. I said Vicky. Her name's Vicky. You may persecute me as much as you like, said Victoriana to John. No doubt you see me as thus, with my back to the wall, wakes in the hunting lust in you. What? You will always follow the cry of the majority, but I will fight to the end. So there! And she began to cry. I'm extremely sorry, but, John said. And I know it was a good song, sobbed Victoriana, because all the great singers are persecuted in their lifetime, and I'm persecuted. Therefore I must be a great singer. She has you there, said the Clevers, as Victoriana left the laboratory. You mustn't mind her being a little bitter, said Gus. She's so temperamental and sensitive. She has suffered a great deal. Well, I must admit, said one of the Clevers, now that she's gone, that I think the stuff of hers is rather vicieux. I don't know what that means. I can't stand it myself, said another. I think it was her face that needed slapping, said a third. She's been spoiled and flattered her whole life, said the fourth. That's what's the matter with her. Quite, the rest said in chorus. What's going on? Chapter The South Wind. Perhaps, said Gus, someone else would give us a song. I will, said 30 voices altogether, but one cried much louder than the others, and its owner had stepped forward into the middle of the room before anyone could do anything about it. He was one of the bearded men, and wore nothing but a red shirt and a codpiece made of skins of crocodiles, and suddenly he began to beat on an African tom-tom and to croon with his voice, swaying his lean, half-clad body to and fro, staring at all of them, out of eyes which were like burning coals. This time John saw no picture of the island at all. He seemed to be in a dark green place full of tangled roots and hairy vegetable tubes, and that all at once he saw shapes moving and writhing where there was no vegetable but human. And the darker the green grew, and the fierce heat came out of it, and all the shapes were moving in the darkness and came together to make a single obscene image which dominated the whole room, and the song was over. Priceless, said the Clevers. Too stark, too virile. John blinked and looked around, and when he saw all the Clevers as cool as cucumbers, smoking their cigarettes and drinking drinks that looked like medicines, all as if nothing remarkable had happened, he troubled in his mind, for he thought that the song must have meant something different to them. And if so, he argued, what very pure-minded people they must be, feeling himself among his betters. He became ashamed. You like it then, Hein? Said the bearded singer. I don't think I understood it, said John. I make you like it, Hein, said the singer, snatching up his tom-tom again. It was what you really wanted all the time. No, cried John. I know you're wrong there. I grant you that. That sort of thing is what I always get if I think too long on the island, but it can't be what I want. I don't know what's happening. No? Why not? If it is what I wanted, why am I so disappointed when I get it? If a man really wanted was food, how could he be disappointed when the food arrived? As well, I don't understand. What do you not understand? I explain to you. Well, it's like this. I thought that you objected to Mr. Halfway's singing because it led to brown girls in the end. So we do. Well, why is it better to lead to black girls in the beginning? What the heck are we talking about? A low whistle ran around the whole laboratory. John knew he had made a horrible blunder. Look here, said the bearded singer, in the new voice. What do you mean? You're not suggesting that there's any of that kind about my singing, are you?" I suppose perhaps it was my fault," stammered John. "In other words," said the singer, "you are not yet able to distinguish apart from art and pornography." "What?" And advancing towards John, very deliberate, he spat in his face and walked out of the room. "That's right, Fally," cried the Clevers. "Serve him right." "Filthy-minded little beast," said one. "Yeah, Puritanian," said the girl. "I expect he's impotent," whispered another. "You mustn't be too hard on him," cried Gus. "He's full of inhibitions, and everything he says is only rationalization of him. Perhaps he ought to get better with... Perhaps he would get on better with something more formal. Why don't you sing, Glugly?" "Oh, it goes on another chapter, but I don't know what's going on, and I feel like all of it is bad. I feel like it's all bad. I don't even know if I want to keep reading this. This is getting really bad. I mean, I don't even know what's going on. I don't even know what's going on, but I feel like there's so much bad. Just all so much bad. I thought this was going to be like Pilgrim's Progress or some kind of adventure story, but this is just bad. It's bad. It's bad. Do I want to keep reading this? Like, do I want to read this? I don't even know what's happening. I'll tell you what, I'm going to bookmark it. And if anybody's actually interested in hearing the rest of this story, let me know in the comments below. I don't usually ask you to comment. But if anybody actually wants to hear the end of this story, say so, and I'll finish the book. Otherwise, I might just put it down and call it a lost cause. Because I don't know what's happening, and I would love to start a different book. I have Agatha Christie books I'd love to be reading. I have Sherlock Holmes stories I want to read. I have other mysteries I want to read. I have lots of things I could be reading, but this is weird. I mean, I'm not any kind of a literary critic. I am completely unqualified for that. But this, I'm not following the story. The characters are weird. There's so many racist remarks. I don't know what's happening. It's C.S. Lewis. That's the Narnia guy. He wrote Narnia. But what is this? What is this? So, no more me ranting. If you guys would like to hear more of this story, please let me know. Otherwise, I will more than happily move on to another book. Next book I'm probably going to read is an Agatha Christie because I've gotten into the game and it's gotten me back into reading her books, and frankly, I love it. So I would love to do a reading of an Agatha Christie book, especially one I haven't read before. Maybe even the And Then There Were None, just like the game. I'd love to read the book. I haven't read it yet. Good idea? That sound better than this? Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. And remember, one video away from video 500. See you guys in the next video.